All sports fans have experienced this, right? Something amazing happens on the ice and you think, man, I wish I'd have been filming. Now with the Sporfy app, you can replace that thought with a click. With just one click of a button, Sporfy captures the past 15 seconds of action so you can instantly replay and share your favorite moments all without having to film. And it's easy too. All you have to do is download the app on iOS or Android devices and experience an all new way of filming sports highlights.
3 topics, 60 minutes covering the biggest news in the ECHL. This is the 3 Periods Podcast. Now here are your hosts, Matthew Harding and Zach Porter.
Thank you very much, Ben Holden, and good evening, everybody. Welcome into the maiden voyage of the 3 Periods Podcast. I am Matthew Harding, along and reunited with my good friend, Zach Porter. Buddy, how you doing? It has been far too long since we have done one of these.
Well, I'm extremely grateful to be doing this with you again, and it hasn't been far too long, but as they say, reunited, and it feels so good.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I am pumped that you and I are doing this podcast again, and I love the idea of having 3 periods where we devote pretty equal time to every topic. You know, every podcast that you and I've done in the past and every one that we've done here on the website really is kind of front loaded, if you will, to certain topics, and one that you can pick up and put down, but you don't know if you necessarily come back to it because they are quite long. What we want to do with this podcast is to make it something that over the course of a workday you can consume. Whether you are on a break, you can listen to a topic in a break, or if you're on an hour-long lunch, you can knock out a podcast during a lunch. I love the idea of this podcast, and I hope that everybody listening does as well.
Well, you know, I've been begging you to do a podcast for at least the last 4 or 5 years, and it just took a good idea. So I'm glad that we mutually came up with this idea. And yeah, I mean, you know, for me right now, being at work and with everything going on around the country, it's easy to pop the AirPods in and try and pull up a podcast. Problem is, a lot of them are, 2 hours long. And I think fans out there will be excited about having something they can, like you said, watch or listen to on their lunch break and not have to worry about trying to finish up the rest of it in the evening or the next day.
Yeah, absolutely. And we are on Twitter as well. We'll give you the way to connect with us on Twitter. It is at 3 Periods Pod. Zach and I will see that. And if you have any feedback for the show, be sure to drop it there and let us know what you think about it. Or you can hit me up. I'm at Sinbin Thunder. Zach is at Goalie Guy 87. 3 topics for you tonight on the show. First, obviously, is the big story as it continues to be and really has been since March here in North America and United States, how COVID-19 is going to impact the ECHL. We'll talk with ECHL Commissioner Ryan Creelan about that. We'll offer up our insights on how the ECHL is going to maneuver through this pandemic and hopefully get into hockey in about 3 months. Topic number 2 for tonight: which team will benefit from the extra 3 months of the offseason? Actually, it's 2 when you think about it. And then the third topic: 4 new head coaches in the ECHL so far this offseason. Who will make the biggest impact on their team? Zach and I like to debate, but we only have 20 minutes for each topic. And the first topic for tonight, as we talked about, is ECHL and COVID-19. The ECHL is going to start tentatively on December the 4th after play stopped on March 12th of 2020 after, I believe, the Wednesday night slate of games across the ECHL. By that point, if the season were to begin on time on December 4th, it will be a almost full 9 months since we've had hockey here in the United States for the ECHL. I guess the first question that I have here to kind of open it up is, as we where did we where do we put hockey now? And this is kind of a loaded question, so I apologize for the loaded question out of the box. But where do we put hockey in the overall landscape of things now with a pandemic going around? Like, it's easy enough to sit and watch for 14 hours a week. That we're watching hockey. But where do you put that now in the scope of everything?
Well, I think, anybody should have the same answer, which is that hockey is a minute part of our culture right now and what's going on around us, that hockey is not nearly as important as, people staying safe. And, when we were talking about our topics, the first thing I wrote down was clearly throughout sports, not just hockey, but sports in general, player, coach, staff, fan, people safety was the forefront reason for the shutdown, the pause, whatever you'd like to call it. And right now, at least until things get settled down in the United States, we have to be cautious, and sports has to be cautious, and they have to do what's best, for whoever's going to be in the arena, whether that be fans or just players and coaches and staff. You look at what's going on with the bubble right now in the NHL and the 0 positive test cases that they've had. It's been a very good experience. It's been a very positive thing for Gary Bettman, which Gary Bettman always needs wins. And this is a big win for Gary Bettman and the NHL and the NHLPA and the players and the coaches. Everybody wins in this situation, and that includes the fans. So when hockey does come back into arenas, and whether that be a bubble format, which, that we start getting into the financial realm of how that impacts teams, and that's not for you or I to really break down. But however hockey comes back, I know, in your conversations with Ryan Creelan and across North American hockey, that the leagues are doing what's best for safety and for health, and the financial side of it is really taking a back seat to what's going on with COVID-19 and everybody's safety.
That's an excellent point, because I think what we've learned now about this is that everything that we thought we knew that went into putting a team together, putting players and apartments and things like that, all of that now changes with this. There are so many unknowns with this. Do you have an extra bus? Teams are going to have extra apartments. How does testing weigh into all of this? There are so many unknowns to this, and we asked ECHL Commissioner Ryan Creelan about this during an episode of the Hockey Talk podcast recently, and he said the league is working diligently to develop protocol to help everybody and give them some kind of leeway as to what to expect if the ECHL resumes in early December.
Very ingrained. And yes, we've got multiple documents, as it relates to reopening our arena for fans and employees, and then certainly working with the PHPA and their executive committee for a return to play protocol. The issue is things are constantly changing as well. And so it's trying to nail down a moving target. And while we're, having discussions with the union, making sure we're preparing, every day brings something new.
He hit the nail on the head for the last 8 months. No 2 days have ever been the same with this pandemic.
That's exactly right. And nothing's going to stay the same up until December 4th or whatever it is. The things are going to consistently change, and whether that be hopefully for the better or, maintaining where we're at right now, I've always held the opinion, and it's strictly my opinion, that hockey on December, let's say, what was it, 4th? Is that correct, Matt?
Yeah.
December 4th is not going to be ticket takers at the door, scanning you in, having a beer with your buddies, and, an arena full of people. The December 4th for AHL, ECHL, and SPHL across the board is going to be very different than what we're used to. And to what extent, I don't know, but I am fully of the belief that if hockey starts on December 4th, which, again, not trying to be negative or anything like that, but the league commissioners, the owners, everybody has to do what's best for safety, and they're doing that. And so hockey may not start, December 4th. Here in Wichita, we're going through the education talks, and how that correlates in this conversation, this podcast is, what is the best option, but the final result always comes down to what is the safest, scenario for the people that are involved. And so to what Commissioner Ryan Creelan's saying is it's ever changing. And what we're talking about today may sound absolutely ridiculous come December 4th, and we may not see hockey until March, or we may see hockey on December 4th, but it will not be like we're used to seeing at this level. And for all we know, we all may be watching from home.
That's an excellent point. I think the thing that we all need to come to grips with, whether you're a fan who goes in and buys beers and cheers loudly, or you're a fan and part of the booster club who feeds players and loads buses, or you're a member of the media, the way you do your job and the way you go and support your team in the arenas has changed profoundly. I was talking to a league executive on the same day that I did that interview with Commissioner Creelan. I think it was a couple of Fridays ago, and he was telling me that media may end up having to do post-game interviews from a press box, and that there would be no feeding for a booster club because you want the players to be in as much of a bubble as they can, even though it doesn't make fiscal sense to put the teams in bubbles like what they are doing in Toronto and Vancouver, or in Edmonton, with the NHL as the playoffs continue for the big boys up there. That model, the bubble model, just doesn't make sense for the ECHL and especially the American Hockey League as well. But getting back to that point, like, everything's going to change, and we, the other aspect of our conversation was we asked, Commissioner Creelan, where are you at with putting together these protocols, and what kind of principles are guiding you? Here's what he had to say.
Hygiene, a focus on hygiene, distancing, and masks. And when you put those together, there is a path forward. Same thing on the fan side of things, and reopening our buildings and getting our employees back in as well.
Is it your sense that most arenas in your footprint will mandate masks?
I mean, it's certainly the sense I get. I guess it's based on jurisdictional guidelines and approval.
And I think because masks are such a hot button issue, I think we have to make it big, plain, and straight here right away that the ECHL and its member clubs are not mandating that you wear masks. Those come from county governments and the jurisdictions that own the arenas. That's not on the teams. So don't be mad at, if you don't want to wear a mask, And
again, that'll change drastically by December as well. And who knows? I mean, at that point, especially, and again, I don't want to dip into the financial side of it, but if teams are required to play, or leagues are required to play, and I'm not strictly talking about the ECHL or any particular team, but if leagues are required to play to sustain financial stability, they may actually require masks. They may not. But ultimately, if your city, county, state is requiring it at that time, obviously you'll have to do it. It's just like going to the store right now. So I wanted to hop back real quick while we have a little bit of time on your point about the booster clubs. At the parent club level, The NHL level, most of that stuff that happens with booster clubs is catered in. There's really not the need for the booster clubs at those levels. That's a very interesting point that I hadn't even thought about until you mentioned it, is, how they're going to sustain feeding players on game nights or pregame or on the road. The snacks that guys get on the bus. I know here in Wichita, players get goodie bags for the road, stuff like that. I'm sure there's all ways to distance that and make that happen like ahead of time. But post-game meals, it's a very there's so many details that are going to have to be worked out. That's why I said earlier, like December 4th is their hopeful date, but there's so much to work through that I'm glad they're giving themselves that time to work through all these issues, to try and get things settled to where we have the most normal hockey as possible. The other point that was made was about, how the press is going to work. The first couple times I saw the NHL do their Zoom meetings, basically the press conferences by Zoom or however they're doing them by video call, kind of odd, but it's become normal to me. It's actually not as different as a live press conference. So it wouldn't surprise me if, the league has teams use their own Zoom account, and then, you and Matthew Will are allowed access to that Zoom meeting and given your chance to talk. That's a great way for everybody to stay distant from each other and still get the same exact audio and content that we as press would get after a game.
Yeah, I'm the same way with you. I thought it was a little convoluted at first, but technology is great. Where would we be in this pandemic if we didn't have Zoom, Microsoft Teams, Google Hangout, whatever? I mean, we would probably still be looking at walking down or sending questions down to the team media rep for them to walk down to the locker room at the end of the game. And that's no way to write a news story, and that's no way to have a rapport with the team head coach. So I will sing the praises of Zoom every single day until even far past it going away. But we're going to get to a point where we're going to have to, everything, to your point initially about the masks, everything will change. Very, very clearly, everything will change. But I don't think that we're going to continue to go through this pandemic with masks, the flip-flop on the masks like we had initially. I think that those are here to stay. Again, it just goes back to a choice as to whether if you want to attend an event, if you want to wear a mask or not. But I do want to talk about really quick in our final few moments here of our initial discussion about this, to touch on the schedule. And you'd mentioned that the 72 game season, we asked Commissioner Creelan about the potential for any kind of we asked him about why the 72 game season would start on December 4th. And here is that response.
Right? Every day brings new information. And so we want to wait as long as possible before releasing that to give as many teams and jurisdictions the ability to open their doors. Our goal and the structure around December 4th is a full season. Again, we're going to take everything in stride. I mean, all options are on the table, but as we look towards that next logical step, our goal is to play a full season.
If he thinks that there can be a full season, who am I to debate him on it? But I'm in the same boat as you, that I don't believe we're going to see hockey on December 4th. And I think the linchpin for all of this is going to come when Canada and the United States decide to open the border. When they decide to open the border, that's the tell that, okay, we're about to get ready to go for the season. Do I think it's going to be in December 4th? I don't know. Labor Day's coming up, and every doctor at the CDC believes that the Labor Day holiday and our ability to go out and party on Labor Day may set us up for for the fall. And then we have Halloween parties and all of that could set us up for the winter. So,
well, and
that border opens.
This is a total scenario made up by me, but what teams could do, or what the leagues could do, is have 3-3s essentially, or 3-4s. But let's just use Wichita and Tulsa as the example. Wichita travels to Tulsa on Thursday, plays Thursday and Friday, off Saturday, and plays a Sunday game. You do that same type of schedule where it's a 3-4 or even a 3-3, you could get 72 games in by the end of May if you started on December 4th. You're looking at 12 games a month, which is still maybe a little bit under what they would normally do. But while it would be grinding, you'd still have guys off for 5 days or so and be able to recoup, get into the gym, get skates in and stuff like that. There's, I think, ways to limit travel, to limit multiple cities in multiple days. You saw what happened in baseball right off the bat, where basically the Miami Marlins got shut down, which then shut down the Philadelphia Phillies and the New York Yankees. So I think if you limit travel to where Wichita is only in Tulsa for a week, and then next week they're home, and then the next week they're in Allen, then you're limiting the exposure, but you're still getting teams out on the road. You're not having bubbles, and you're able to play 12 games in a month. And over the course of 5 months, you got 60 games, and you only got to shove another 12 in there somewhere else. It's going to be very interesting. None of us are gonna nail this on the head as to what's going to happen.
Right.
But what we do know in talking with Commissioner Creelan, and what we have seen since the pause in the NHL, the shutdown in the minor leagues, is that teams are making decisions that are best for players and fan safety. And that I truly believe that's what they're going to continue to do.
I completely agree. And this, to me, the way that the schedule is going to be formatted this year, I think, is going to be very reminiscent. Do you remember the 2014-15 year after the CHL and ECHL consolidated, and how we had you saw Rapid 52 times, and you saw Allen 87 times, and Tulsa 418 times? Get ready to see a lot of nearby rivals. A lot.
It'll be an Alaska Aces type schedule for every team. Yes. It's going to be a lot of playing the same team multiple times a week, probably. But yeah, absolutely. That first year of the consolidation, all of those old Central Hockey League teams were playing the same 6-7 teams multiple times a month. But when you're looking 6 years ahead of time, now with COVID, you're looking at that being a very responsible way of creating the schedule.
Yeah. And I think if they can go back to that and put it all together, I think that if we start on December 4th, that's going to be the way that hockey comes back in the ECHL. And then once we get back, the beautiful thing about it is that we're really setting ourselves up for 18 months of ECHL hockey. Like there would be a small break, and then we're right back into it again the following October for another full season. So lots to look forward to once we get past whatever this pause looks like.
Yeah, for sure. And as a fan, you used to hate that gap from July until October, and now buckle in, because as long as everybody stays healthy, we're going to have hockey for quite a while. Absolutely.
So the horn is going to sound, and that is the end of our first topic. Not bad.
Not bad at all. Nice job.
Yeah. The second topic for tonight is which team benefits now from this protracted offseason that we've talked about. Again, 9 months between when the COVID shutdown happened to the potential first time that we'll see a face-off in the ECHL. Lots of teams going out and loading up players and getting ready for the 2020-21 campaign across the league. In looking at this afternoon, doing the homework for the podcast, I could not come up with just one team tracked off. I think you look at several teams, and my view anyway is you look at several teams, and like a Wichita, and you look at that roster, and you see that there are pieces already back, and then head coach Bruce Ramsey's adding more to supplement the cast that already came in that first year, and then you see what teams like Toledo's doing, and they're adding more firepower aside from just one whole scorer or one big scoring line. Now they have probably 2 or 3 lines that can rack up points with ease. And Fort Wayne's just bringing back the same crew that they bring back every single year. So I'm not sure that there is necessarily one team that benefits from a protracted offseason, which is why I love that you selected this topic.
Yeah, and I actually came up with a team, and I want to give our podcast partners in the Corners podcast, Sean and Cece, a little bit of love on this one. The Tulsa Oilers, they signed a 3-year deal with the Anaheim Ducks as their new affiliate, and going from I blanked out there. What's that?
It went from San Diego, who is their American League affiliate.
Right, but last year they had, the St. Louis Blues as their affiliate, so they're going from the St. Louis Blues to the Anaheim Ducks. I think Rob Murray and the Tulsa Oilers have the most to gain. They benefit the most from this. One thing that we've seen, here in Wichita, and again, sorry, this isn't a Wichita podcast, but Matt and I are both from Wichita. If you're new to this, you'll hear it a lot, but it's our best way to explain when Wichita first got their affiliate with the Ottawa Senators, things didn't go, I think, as planned. And when they switched over to Edmonton, there were still some growing pains, but you saw the benefit then of the affiliation. Key example there for Wichita was Shane Starrett, who should be with the Edmonton Oilers on the parent club roster. I would hope by next season. They also have Dylan Wells and Shane Skinner, who they're very high on. But back to the Tulsa Oilers, Rob Murray has that team on an uphill streak. They ended the paused season close to 500, but they'd gone to the conference finals the year before. Rob Murray has done very good things in Tulsa, which hasn't been done since the early Bruce Ramsey years, where they have consistency, they have goal scoring, and they have that typical Tulsa shutdown defense, which God only knows how a team at the AA hockey level can be so consistent with their mold over a variety of different coaches and a variety of different years. But the Tulsa Oilers have always been that type of team that, much like any John Tortorella coach team, they shut down, play shutdown defense in the third period. They're lower scoring games, but Tulsa has gotten key players. And I think that them maybe having this extended offseason to learn about the parent clubs, to learn about San Diego, to learn about Anaheim, and to grow that relationship before they even touch the ice is going to be a huge benefit to Rob Murray and to how the workings are going to be. So once his team hits the ice, he knows if they're going to need, defensemen more than they're going to need forwards, if they're going to need goaltending. So, maybe he goes out and signs a marquee goaltender that's going to stay at this level, much like Bruce Ramsey did last year with the Wichita Thunder. But Tulsa, I think, overall, and with our third period, we're going to talk a little bit different on the coaching side. But as an organization, as a team, the Tulsa Oilers benefits the most from this because of their new affiliation with the Anaheim Ducks.
That's a really good one. And that is something that I did not even remotely come close to. So hat tip to Cece and Sean, our friends at the In the Corners podcast, for that. and you're absolutely right. Tulsa was making a push. I think had that season come to fruition, had it come to a conclusion, I think Tulsa would have snuck in over Rapid City. Tulsa was charging hard there toward the end of the season. Wichita was there as well, but they were 10 points out and fading rather quickly. So, I think Tulsa would have been there, but that's a really good move for them to go from team and really not a lot to develop to the Anaheim Ducks, who are in a full-on rebuild there with that club, and the San Diego Gulls. I got to see a couple of goal players who were in Tulsa during their push to the conference finals, and Alex Dosty was one of them. He lit up the score sheet every single time he was on the ice. I think in Game 7 against the Kansas City Mavericks, he had 5 points. Just a tremendous talent there in San Diego and Alex Dosty. And so, I think having a little bit more time for Rob Murray to see what he needs out of that and what the goals can give him, and even through the draft coming up here in a few weeks in the NHL, I think that will pay huge dividends for that hockey club.
Yeah, Tulsa was 29, 26, and 8 going into the shutdown, the pause. And I use this stat a lot with the Thunder. If you win some of those overtime loss games, you're sitting at a much higher win percentage, a lot, obviously better points. Even if they win half of those, you're sitting at 33, 26, and 4. And that's a pretty good record. The year prior, Tulsa was 42, 24, and 6. And again, they went to the conference finals. So, I can't imagine what it's like for a coach at especially at the ECHL level to try and mentally manage a team that you never know when you're gonna have a call up. You have your AHL contracted players, sometimes your NHL contracted players, but if you have a guy that you signed for your roster and all of a sudden he goes on a hot streak, that parent club could say, we want him. Mm-hmm. And, you can't bet or, have that ace up your sleeve all year long at the ECHL level. So again, any coach that has, especially at this level, this extended offseason really, I think, would be a blessing for coaches just to try and solidify what their plan is, what the parent club's going to do. As you mentioned, the draft, and with the way that the NHL did the draft lottery this year, we won't get into that, but with the way that they did it this year, there's a lot of unanswered questions. Mm-hmm. And so when you're connected to an affiliate, you have to look at all of those things, how they finish in the playoffs, how the draft goes, who the free agent market, which CC and Sean touched on as well. There's so many variables, and then throw on top of that a brand new affiliate, and not just an affiliate for 1 year. They signed a 3-year deal. Yeah. And so 3 years is a long haul. That's a complete changeover of, you talk about rebuilds in sports for professional leagues. A rebuild can be 5 years. A rebuild in minor league hockey is a year. You are expected the next year to revamp that roster and go. So lot to look at, but I really do think that Tulsa can benefit the most from that, in Kansas City as well. But we'll get into that here in a little bit as far as how Kansas City is going to benefit from this offseason. But, yeah, Tulsa has so much to gain with Rob Murray learning about how Anaheim and San Diego work as their affiliates.
I've talked to a handful of ECHL coaches here over the last couple of months just to get a sense of the recruiting strategy that they are going to have. And whether the sense that they're getting from players is whether they want to play closer to home or not in case this bubbles back up again and we get into a situation where travel is frozen again and you're not able to come back over across the pond, or you're not able to get back across the border from Canada. And that presents a real interesting recruiting conundrum for them as well. A lot of coaches right now are laying in wait to see if to see if they can pick off players from across the pond in Europe. If they don't have leagues, if they don't have hockey over there this year, pick them off and bring them over in to see if they can improve their team. So I think it's not, in my view, it's not necessarily one team that benefits from a longer offseason. It's coach. Jack Holmes is the perfect guy for this situation. And again, we bring up Wichita all the time, but that's what we know. But Jack Holmes came in from the Thunder in free agency last year, and that was a mid-November pickup. And instantly paid dividends for that Thunder club. Now you have him potentially, or somebody like him, to start the season if we start on time and if they do not play hockey over in Europe this year. So, I mean, the whole longer off-season deal just changes the game completely.
Yeah, and teams are going to have to think about that. You look at right now in the AHL level, guys are going to Russia to play. And being loaned to the KHL to play. So it's going to go both ways as far as if players want to come back in December and play in the States, or if they're from here or in Canada. It'll be very interesting to see if guys skip out, if some of the regulars, if they decide to opt out. I mean, the one thing that I don't think we've really talked about, and I know it's kind of off topic from what the question is, but is guys have families. We personally know players that have had kids on rosters, and do guys want to take the risk of traveling? And again, that's not a negative question, but there have been players that have opted out of every sport so far. Yeah. And so the question becomes for coaches in this offseason to really get firm commitments from players of, yes, I'm going to play no matter what the situation. I'm in and I'm ready to go. And it'll be very interesting to see, again, if guys come back from overseas, if they're able to bring guys back, or if they're going to have issues with guys not wanting to play or not, choosing not to play because of what's going on in North America.
Yeah, absolutely. And just a plug for our transactions page. You can check out all of the latest signings in the ECHL on our transactions page at the sinbin.net. Time to blow the horn again on this topic. We are 2/3 of the way done on our 3 periods premiere episode. The final question of the night, Mr. Corder, which new head coach will make the biggest impact on their team? There are 4 new head coaches in the ECHL as of September 1st. Andrew Lord in Greenville, Mark French in Wheeling, Ryan Blair in South Carolina, Tad O'Had in Kansas City. Who you got?
Well, the question is, who makes the biggest impact? And for me, the answer is Tad O'Had. And I think the reason for that is Kansas City Maverick fans have been walking a very thin line of their pleasure with the team over the last several years. And that is a fan base that when they started that organization was looking like they were going to be the next Colorado Eagles of 5,289 fans packing that place. That atmosphere in Independence is amazing. You and I have covered playoff games there. In an organization that in its short history already has rich traditions of being successful. They've not won a championship, but they have been successful in the past. And as of the last couple of years, the fans have not been very happy with the production on the ice. And it was very odd to see, not only from a fan perspective, but then from a journalistic perspective, the fan base go from having such jubilation about having a team there to the really unrest is with the word I'll use, and of how the team was performing. So Tato has the ability now to come in after being an assistant coach with Florida, the Florida Everblades since 2013, 2014, their associate head coach for the last 4 seasons. They went on a 3-season playoff appearance. They would have made the playoffs again, in my opinion, again this year. And Tato comes in with a plethora of knowledge from that Florida organization, who is really a staple organization of the Southeast in the ECHL, and brings all that experience to the Midwest now to try and recruit guys. And I really think that this is the year for the Mavericks to turn a corner, and for Brent Thiessen to regain some confidence from his fans, for the Independence event, for the arena out there in Independence to get packed again, and to really regain that luster that they had several seasons ago, where they were a great franchise, not only in production and wins, but with fans, the overall atmosphere several years ago. So for me, my first coach pick will be Tato with the Kansas City Mavericks.
That's an interesting one, and I'll come back to it here in just a bit. Andrew Lord is mine, and I don't think that there's a more decorated coach in the ECHL outside of Steve Martinson than Andrew Lord. He joins the Swamp Rabbits after an incredible career with Cardiff in the EIHL over in Britain. He had 6 years behind the bench, led the Devils to 9 championships, including 3 conference titles, 2 Challenge Cups, 2 Elite League titles, and the last 2 playoff championships there before he made it over. And it says a lot about the guy and it says a lot about what Lord built over with Cardiff. When you hear about their managing director see them on Twitter saying thank you, the whole fan base said thank you. Past and present players all said thank you to him. There is I think that speaks volumes to Andrew Lord, the person. And I'm willing to bet that he just maybe felt like that it was time to see if what he had could work over here in North America. The EIHL is not a league to scoff at, like you and I talked off air. That's not a league to sneeze at. Some really good players go over there and play in that league and do very, very well. And for him to go over there and have great success, I think speaks a lot about him and about what he has developed. But I think it's time to come over and see if it works in North America. And Greenville has a really good affiliate system with the Carolina Hurricanes. Not sure on who the AHL affiliate will be for the Carolina Hurricanes, at least not right off the top of my head. But I think they're going to do very well with their affiliate next year. And Lord has already done a really good job of recruiting players to the Swamp Rabbits. So I think Andrew Lord has the ability to make the biggest impact there. That was a team that could put up a whole bunch of goals, but also allowed a ton of goals as well in the Kevin Kerr system. So I think that if they tighten that up a little bit, then Greenville is up there with the Floridas and the South Carolinas in that South Division as a team that could really contend and possibly even come out of that division and play for an Eastern Conference championship. Not sure if it'll be next year or the year after, but I do think that sooner rather than later, Greenville is going to be a very loud voice in that already loud Southeast Division with South Carolina and Florida.
Lord have mercy.
Sorry, South Division with South Carolina and Florida.
Lord have mercy. Wow. The thing about it is, and you brought the topic up, is does that European style play into the ECHL? What you're looking at a European, a British NHL, if you will. The KHL is the Russian NHL. It's all about money, honestly, and you can lure guys across overseas to play at that league. No matter there's not like a AA, AAA. That's what they have, and so it'll be interesting to see is if that style can translate, and then if he can get the players in to play at that type of a level. It's a lot of finesse hockey. It's like I said, it's Euro hockey, but he did play in North America for a long, long time. He's actually played in the ECHL with Wheeling, played at the AHL level. So he's accustomed to North American hockey. He may have actually taken that over there and translated that success over there. So he did play for Cardiff for several years in a row and then went right into coaching, which it's got to be a nice gig to go straight from playing to head coach. So
good work if you can get it.
That one will be very interesting. I think that one can be kind of a coin flip of hit or miss. And if it hits, that's a really good win for Greenville.
Yeah. I want to go back to Tad O'Had in Kansas City. And you and I have talked about this, and I think that especially considering the youth that Tad O'Had has signed up in Kansas City, I think we need to caution Maverick fans on youth in a pro roster. We saw this a lot in Wichita last year, where youth on a roster means that they will make a lot of mistakes. You're asking players to play in situations that they are not accustomed to at the pro level, where they're playing against guys who are so much more seasoned than they are. And they will have a lot of teachable moments up there. And do I expect that they're going to get 250 goals scored on them? No. But there will be some 6-1, 7-1, 5-1 nights up there in Kansas City. But I think if you trust the process that Tad O'Had brings to that franchise, given what he's built in Florida and helped build in Florida, if you trust that process, then yes, Kansas City can be one of those barns again where it's jam-packed every Friday night, every Saturday night. And I'll be honest, the last game that we went and watched before the pandemic shut everything down, you could hear a pin drop in that building because it was so quiet. There were maybe 2,500 fans in that barn on that Sunday afternoon that you and I traveled up to Independence for that game.
Yep.
That barn needs to be revitalized again, and it needs to be the fans who do it, but it has to take them buying into the process of Coach O'Had and what they're doing up there to do that first.
Yeah, right now, as of today, the average age on that team is 25 years old.
Very young.
Which that can also go one of two ways, not to use the same expression I just used, but that youth movement, again, it's about buying into the coach, not only from the fans' perspective, but from the players' perspective. If he has a great system and he can get players to buy in, and he's bringing in young guys, though, that are a coach-first type of player, that can be very successful. You're looking at not having as many injuries, but potentially at stamina, guys that can play late in the games, etc. So it'll be very interesting to see. And again, my whole thought on that is, I love that they hired John Scott Dixon. I love that that the Mavericks are a very family, they keep it within the family. They're very loyal. They always have been. It's honestly, it's the best compliment I can give to that organization is that they are a very family themed, from the fans to the players to the coaches, organization. I love that John Scott Dixon got a chance, but it was time for Brent Thiessen to make that splash coaching hire, and this is the guy that if they're going to do it, this is the guy to do it, in my opinion. So we'll see how that goes. I do want to bring up, you and I talked off air, but there's 2 other hires that happened this offseason.
Yeah.
And not that this is a two-sided question, but Mark French and Wheeling. Mark French is a guy that Wichita fans and anybody from the old CHL days will remember. He coached in Wichita for 2.5 seasons. After being an assistant coach, in the ECHL with the Atlantic City Boardwalk Bullies, got his first head coaching gig in Wichita, started off with a bang, mediocre the second season, then got fired midway through the third. Mark French is going to be a coach that's to watch in Wheeling to see not how this season goes, but next season. Wheeling has improvements they need to make, obviously, which is why they made a coaching change. But as good of a coach as Mark French has been, and he's won championships with the Hershey Bears, there's a lot of things to his credit as far as coaching goes. But then there's a pattern of 3 to 4 years, and the team drops off and he gets fired. And so without trying to sound like Negative Nancy here, Wheeling is going to have to keep their eye on how that team is going. And you have to, from history, have a little bit of a short leash, because historically, over 4 or 5 teams now, that's been the pattern. So it'll be very interesting to see, though, after coaching overseas and coaching in the AHL prior to that, how Mark French reacclimates himself at the ECHL level and how strong he can come out of the gate and make that Wheeling club better. Do I think he makes Wheeling a better team right off the bat? Yes, honestly, I do. Yeah. I'm not sitting here saying this is a absolute dumpster fire by any means. Right. Not even close to that. I think he makes Wheeling a better hockey club. But in seasons past 2021, they're going to have to keep an eye on how that team goes. To use a Corona expression, to see if if it balances out, and if there starts to become a decline. Straightening of the curve.
Right.
So,
yeah.
And again, he may come out and win a championship. He did it in Hershey. That's great. He almost did it in Wichita after taking over for Derek Laxdal. So there's potential for Mark French to do really good things. I actually had him as the biggest impact coach, but history has a tendency to repeat itself. And so that's where I want to leave that topic on my side of things. But okay. Wheeling will have to keep an eye on that. And I do want to get your opinion on it, but Wheeling will have to keep an eye on how Mark French and that team goes over the years.
Yes. And that's a great point that you bring up about, the success being the flash in the pan, and then what happens when the flash goes away and you're left to build your own team. I think you mentioned this earlier when we talked, that he's coaching for wins, that he wants to get back to a higher level of hockey. I think that in some sort of places that he won't talk about at parties, he's done with the Europe deal. That I think he really wants to get back to the American Hockey League and really want to apply his trade up there, or even get up to the National Hockey League as well. An incredibly bright hockey mind is Mark French, but you're right. What does he do when he has his own players? In Wichita, he had Derek Laxdal's players. In Hershey, he had the previous coach's players and won 2 titles. Plus, he had the Washington Capitals, he had the Washington Capitals signing players for them. So what do you do when you're now the second rung on the affiliation ladder? You have to go out and recruit your own players. And, oh, by the way, that wide open style, that non-physical style that Mark French likes to play, well, now you have to go and react and change that up, because Wheeling Nailers hockey is hit you getting off the bus. That's what I've known Wheeling Nailers hockey to be since coming into the ECHL, back to the Clark Donatelli days when they went all the way to the Kelly Cup final. So, that will be a very, very interesting hire to watch there, because we come across as pessimistic, but I'm really optimistic. I think that Wheeling, if they sign 2 or 3 big names up front, they could be a playoff team coming out of that Central Division here moving forward. That I had was Ryan Blair in South Carolina, and honestly, I think Blair is pretty much the continuation of Steve Bergeron. If there's a coach that has the most to lose, it's Ryan Blair, because of the full kitchen that he was given when Steve Bergeron left, plus what he's getting from Hershey and from Washington as well. So I really don't think that Ryan Blair can make a huge impact of those 4, because really it's Kelly Cup or bust in South Carolina every single season.
Yeah, and you have a coach that's coming off Coach of the Year as your predecessor, and so Coach of the Year isn't usually one with having a bad team. So he's, like you mentioned, he's inheriting a great team, kind of the Mark French situation that we're talking about. Which French isn't inheriting a team this time around, but I agree. I think as far as on the rung of biggest impact, this should be a cruise control thing for him, and to implement his style and kind of keep things rolling. It's literally a hold the wheel while I grab something in the back seat. That's all it should be for him. So we'll see how that goes in South Carolina. It'll be interesting to see, because as you mentioned, they're used to winning and they expect to win, and that's seems to be the case of what they want to do again this year.
Yeah, absolutely. So that's it. Those are our 3 topics, and let us know if you disagree with us. You can always hit us up on Twitter at 3periodspod. Zach and I will see that as well, and we'll turn that around to you as well. We did pitch this. We did pitch that very conversation, that last topic, to you on Twitter at 3periodspod earlier on Tuesday, and that poll is almost complete. And I think the Cardiff Devil fan base came out loud and proud for their guy, Andrew Lord. 167 votes. Andrew Lord has 89% of the vote. So well done, Cardiff fan. Yeah. We put one poll out and it goes and gets international attention. So well done, Andrew Lord in Greenville. Tatohad came in second with 5%, followed by Mark French with 4%, Ryan Blair in South Carolina with 2%. So that poll question is done, and we'll have more poll questions for you as we get closer to our next podcast, which will be soon enough. As a matter of fact, we took it out for a test drive. We liked it so much, we get to do it again here in just a couple of days.
Can't wait. Looking forward to it. Glad to be back on the airwaves with you. Fans, make sure that you let us know, what should our 3 periods be? What content, what topics should Matt and I discuss over the offseason? And once the season starts, let us know on Twitter, because we will be happy to talk about the topics that you guys want to talk about in the ECHL.
Absolutely. And that's going to do it for us. For Zach Corder, I'm Matthew Harding. Thank you all very much for listening to the maiden voyage of the 3 Periods podcast. We will talk to you very soon, everybody. Be well and stay safe. We'll talk to you again very soon.
You've been listening to the 3 Periods podcast. Do you have topics you would like discussed? Hit us up on Twitter at 3periodspod with the hashtag TPP on TSB. And for the latest news on the ECHL and minor league hockey, visit thesinbin.net.